Hey everybody, it's me, Jesse, and today I'm going to show you how I fixed the problem that we left off with in the last stream. So I tried a bunch of things and I found a way to fix it, and I only had to add 2 lines of code. And I added 2 more lines of comments to explain why I did it, but I was able to fix it with 2 lines of code in the end. But it took a while. And we're also going to make what we did yesterday look a lot nicer because we just got it functioning and it wasn't very pretty. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. Hope everybody's having a happy Friday so far. It's nice, beautiful weather where I am. So I did spend a little bit of time outside today. Didn't get my workout in yet, so I still need to, maybe I'll do just a little workout at some point today. Um, I don't know about you. I was just so tired this morning. I don't know what was wrong. I had a headache yesterday, and then I woke up really tired this morning. So I hope I'm not getting sick. But I'm feeling okay now. Uh, and hey, how's it going? Got let's see, Deco in the chat. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And for everybody watching, feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat or in the comment section to this video. And yeah, just let me know how you're doing. It doesn't have to be necessarily related to the video. I'll answer any code related questions if you have them, or non-code related questions. I'm pretty laid back about that. But enough about me. Let me show you how we fixed the issue. So the problem was, let me show you the problem first in case you weren't here yesterday for the last stream, and then I'll show you the solution. So let me bring the app over. All right, so the problem was, and you can see, like, we definitely need to work on how this looks because it's a mess. When you click the X, it's supposed to delete this community. So you click the X, it should delete it on the back end. Now that was working, but then the user had no idea it worked. Now, what was happening is that the state for displaying these lives in a parent component, and then we're passing it down as props. It was changing in the parent component, and it was actually changing in props as well, but it wasn't updating the UI. Not exactly sure why. Now, after finding the solution, I think it had something to do with the fact that we were updating, the state was an array, and we were updating items in the array. I That's my guess as to why it was happening, and you'll see why I guess that in a minute. But basically, you're supposed to click the X, and it's supposed to get rid of the item up here and down here. Okay, so now that works. It takes a little while, so we might want to add a loading indicator. I mean, I guess that was like a second or two, but loading indicators are pretty easy to add, and it's kind of nice to give feedback to the user. So maybe we'll add one. Deco says, "Are you a full stack developer?" I'm like kind of full stack, so I can mess around on the back end and do what I need to do. But I would say I'm stronger on the front end than I am on the back end. But I have done some back end work. I've done very minimal back end work in PHP and C Sharp. Shout out to my old team at Dick's Sporting Goods that use C Sharp on the back end. That's most of my experience in C Sharp comes from them, and most of the back end work that I've done that I feel more confident in is in JavaScript using Node.js, usually with the Express.js package. Let's see, for this particular project, our backend is all AWS, so Amazon Web Services. In particular, we're using AWS Amplify, which lets you get started very quickly with a backend that includes DynamoDB for the database. The API is GraphQL. So it's, and we have a bunch of Lambda functions. So I found a bug in one of the Lambda functions that we need to test today to make sure it was fixed. Basically, the bug was once you deleted a community, you couldn't add it again. Even if you tried, it wouldn't add again. So I figured out why that was happening, and I let our backend engineer know, and he fixed it. So I need to test it again just to verify, but that should be working now. And let's see. Sorry if I'm distracted. There are like these little bugs that keep flying to my screen because I have the lights off, and they're just flying all over my screen and bothering me. Uh, I have to figure out some way to get rid of these little bugs because they are very distracting. All right, I'm going to focus now. So here's how we fixed it. What I noticed when I was doing this is out of frustration, I clicked this multiple times. When I clicked this multiple times, it actually worked. So I thought, okay, what if I just call this function more than once? And I tried that, and it didn't work to call it more than once. So then I thought, what if I go into our function where we actually reset the state, which is here, and what if I reset the state to be entirely blank, and then I set it to what was new? So before we weren't doing this step. All right, we were just setting the state. We were grabbing the state, which is an array. In one case, we have an array of strings. In the other case, we have an array of objects. I was resetting the state, and that just wasn't updating. So I set it to be nothing, and then I set it to be, which essentially would set state twice, because for some reason doing it twice was working. And now it works. So simply adding these two lines made it work. And so I'm happy with that. I don't exactly know why. But it worked. Got a few more questions in here. Is it necessary to learn backend, even only a little bit? It's not necessary to learn backend. If you're trying to get a job as a front-end engineer, then you'll probably get placed on a team that has backend engineers, and you won't necessarily need to know the backend. But it's always good to know more. It just opens you up to more jobs. But I would say if you want to focus on the front end, especially when you're starting out, that's fine. I was only front end for a long time before I really started to learn some back end. And like I said, I'm still not 100% confident in my skills on the back end. Like I have to look a lot of stuff up still. Front end, I've been doing it long enough that I generally know what I'm doing most of the time, and I'm pretty confident in my skills. But yeah, I would say you can definitely get a job only on back end or only on front end. Oh, it says the brightness on my screen is really bright. Yeah, it is. You know what? It's because if I like move this off, it gets darker. Why is it so bright? If I move this off the screen, it's not so bright on my face, but the whiteness from the app is making it bright. I should make the app dark mode. That would be kind of cool to do in a future stream, to just make a dark mode. I prefer dark mode. All right. So that's the update on how I ended up fixing that. I just happened to click twice, and that led me down a path that led me to the fix. Okay, so the cool thing is, like, I still don't entirely understand why it wasn't working, but I don't have to. It worked, and now I know a little trick to get it to work in the future. Okay, we have to update state in extra time, but that's not really a big deal. Like, is it the most strictly high performance thing we could do? No, because we're doing one extra step that seems unnecessary, but it's actually working. So we're going to go with that. Now, one thing we can do to make this a little bit nicer, well, a few things we could do is we can shorten these names, which is what we'll do first. Then we can change this button to maybe a little trash icon, a little trash can, and we can put a loading indicator in. I think those things will make this look a lot nicer. The other thing we can do is give a little bit more width here. So I think that this card is a fixed width, and it doesn't need to be fixed width, right? We have some extra space. Now, my monitor is a very large monitor, so I'm going to have more space than most people. But really, what we could do and what we should do is have this closed by default, because these are just test tabs and they don't have anything yet. They will at some point, but we could close it by default, give this card a little bit extra width, make the changes that I had said, and I think this will look a lot nicer. We may even have enough space to keep these in here. This seems a little redundant right now. I'm going to leave it in just for now, but in the future we may want to do something else. Since we're displaying communities here, we don't necessarily need to also display them down here. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to accomplish in this stream. I figure for about in about an hour, I'll end the stream. It depends on how many questions we get. If there's a lot of people watching asking questions, maybe I'll stick around for longer. But I do have a meeting coming up in about an hour and 20 minutes, so I will have to stop at some point. All right, let's get to the code. So our component here is, let's see, behavior form. And we are getting, let's see, first we need to get our data. So let's see what data we're putting into communities. I believe we have all of this data. Let me scroll up. So this is GraphQL. In GraphQL, we can ask for what data we need. So right now we're getting deleted for each community. We're getting an array of objects. Each one of those objects has the deleted key, which is a Boolean, true or false. We're getting the ID. We're getting the version number. And we're getting community ID. The cool thing about the version number is that at some point we could even bring in like an undo feature where we can go back to a previous version, which would be a really cool feature to add in later on, but not necessary for this first version. We're also getting the community ID, and that's what we're displaying. But we can display the name. I believe it's name. We'll find out in a second because we'll get an error if it's not called name. But we can get the name, and that's going to give us something a little bit nicer to display instead of the ID. So let's save that. And now that we have the name, we're passing it down into this component. Sorry about that. I'm got a little bit of congestion. I don't want to sniff into the mic, so I'll probably be going to the side and sniffing if I have to. All right. So where am I mapping? Here we are. So right now we're mapping over everything. I did add a key in because you're supposed to add a key whenever you map over something, a unique key, or else React throws an error. Not necessarily an error. It'll give you a warning. So the app will work, but React does not like it. So right now, we're displaying community ID, but I'd rather display name. So let's see if that works. And let's also remove this. This was one of my failed attempts at fixing this issue. So remove the stuff that we don't need. And let's go over here and see what it looks like. May need to refresh. Uh-oh. I refreshed and broke it. And probably what I did was, let's see, errors. The field name, it's not a field. It's undefined. So let's go to our schema and see what it's supposed to be. So when we use Amplify, we get this schema document that tells us what we can get from the backend and what the names are. So if we go to advertisement and we have communities, and now we're getting community advertisement. And our problem is we don't actually have name on community advertisement. What we'll need to do is dig a little bit deeper and go to community. And community should give us the name. So let's see if we can do it like this. Oops, wrong spot. So instead of name here, what we could say is community and name. This might work. So what this does is this references another entity in the database. So this community advertisement is just an entity that connects a community to an advertisement. So if we go up to where we show communities, we can see if name is valid. So we may as well do that now while we're here. And communities are comment. I think they're way up at the top because it's one of the first things we added. And as our app grows, this keeps getting more complex. I'm not sure if there's a way to break the schema up into multiple files, but that might be a good thing to do. And we could see, yes, we do have name on community. So let's see now. We'll go back here, and we need to change how we're getting this. Oops. Need to scroll down. So instead of trying to get name right off the community object, we actually go community.community dot name. Now we'll see if that works. Could not read name of null. Let's see. Communities. All right. Well, that's not what we're getting. Let's go back. Let's try to see what we are getting. Let me refresh this again and see what we're getting from GraphQL. We're getting data. We get the advertisement. We're trying to get the communities on the advertisements. And we're getting community is null. That's not what we're supposed to get. I think we found a bug, and we found something that's not working. So let's see what our problem is here. Now, we could fix this in a couple different ways. Let me go find, let's go. Community advertisement. Wow. Can't believe that's showing up. There we are. So we should be able to get access to the community. But for some reason, we're not able to access the community. Now we're pulling in community ID. It's possible that maybe we could also pull in the community name and just have it here. But that's a back-end change. Generally, I like to let my back-end engineer know before we make a back-end change so that it doesn't mess anything up. We're working on a dev environment, so what the heck, let's try it. Let's try to do a back-end change here and see if it works. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try this out. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but let's try name. Already that's looking like it's not going to work because it's not giving me the nice green color. It's a different color here. All right, so I don't think that's going to work. But let's check our connection up here and see if we need to also put it up here. All right, so community's way at the top. Let's see where we're connecting community to advertisements. So see, we're connecting community advertisement by community, fields ID. Let's see if we can get the field name. Let's see if we can put both fields on there. So now that we've done it in both places, let's save it. And then we can do Amplify push. See if it'll let us do this. If it doesn't work, we should get an error, because first it'll test everything out and see if this works. So the nice thing about Amplify is that you have this schema file, makes it very easy to edit. Yes, I want to continue. Makes it really easy to edit your back end right from your code on the front end. So this might take a minute. Let me see. Abraham says, "Hi Jesse, can you give your TLDR on Amplify?" Okay, cool. So TLDR is too long, didn't read. So that's just like a summary on Amplify. So sure. AWS Amplify is like, it basically bundles a bunch of AWS services into a very easy to use command line interface. And also it has a graphical user interface on the back end that helps you get started very quickly with Amazon Web Services. Normally you would have to go in and connect all these services together yourself. Amplify lets you do that much quicker. I would say the reason I selected Amplify for this project is that when I started this project about a year ago, I was the only engineer. Okay. All right, so we have messed this up, and it told us right away that we have invalid connection directive advertisements. It fields does not accept a partial sort key. Okay, so we did mess that up. Now what we can try to do, I guess, first of all, let's get rid of what we did. Where's it at? Advertisements. Let's get rid of this name here. And we'll go down here and get rid of wherever we put. Yeah, we put name here on community. Oh, you know what we did here though? We didn't put name. Let's see if we could do. The way I did this was not exactly right. So let's try it again. So you can see now I forgot to add name here, and I'm going to call it community name. And I'm going to put in this connection here. I'm going to call it community name here. But then up here, we want to grab the fields ID and name. All right, we'll give it one more try. If that doesn't work, I'll just explain to my backend engineer what I'd like to do and see if he can figure it out. And then we'll continue on with some of the changes that we wanted to make. And we'll just save this change for when we get the right data. We'll do an amplify push again. And it should take a few seconds. Okay. All right, Abraham says, cool, thanks. All right, glad that description helped you out. Yeah, I had actually never used Amplify before, but I did some research on it and I thought I'm the only engineer. The only way I'm going to be able to work on this quickly is if I can do something simple for the back end. I knew I wanted to use GraphQL because I'd worked with that in the past. And I knew I wanted to use React and React Native. I knew Amplify worked with that. So that just seemed like, of the cloud hosting providers, it was the only one I found that could very easily get me up and running with GraphQL. So that's why I ended up going with AWS Amplify. I've worked in the past a little bit with Microsoft Azure and with Google Cloud. So I've worked with all the main cloud providers. I've also hosted things on DigitalOcean. I like all the other cloud providers. This AWS Amplify just seemed to fit pretty much all of what I wanted to do. It does have some limitations, but you can always basically get around that and pull in other AWS services and use them with Amplify. So our backend engineers created a lot of serverless functions called Lambda functions to do a lot of things. So we've pulled in AWS's recognition service, which is a machine learning service that lets you upload images and then it can check the images. Unknown type string. Hey, we got a different error. That's progress. So I used string lowercase instead of string uppercase. Well, let's give it one more try here. If this doesn't work, then we're just going to go back to front end stuff. Actually, while that's doing its thing, we can come over here and, oops, that was fast. All right, so we should get our error message quickly now if we're going to get an error. Otherwise, it's possible that this works. And we still need to test our new Lambda function. Hey, I think it worked. We never, did we get to this stuff? Oh no, it's still thinking. Hasn't worked yet. Got excited for a second. All right, you remember this is our way of trying to work around the fact that for some reason our community connection is coming up null. Let's see if it's null for everything. Yeah, it does look null for everything. All right, we will need to change how we're pulling this data in. So let's do that now. Since community is coming up null, we'll get rid of that. And instead we'll add in community name, which we should be able to get now if this works, which no, invalid connection directive. Advertisement field does not accept a partial sort key. All right, well, we gave it a good try here. Let's go back and let's take out what we've done. And I will explain to our backend engineer. Shout out to Bruno. Bruno's our backend engineer. He does a great job, and he is always happy. Every time I ask him how he's doing, he says good with a big smile. It's awesome. All right, so I'm going to save that now. Since none of our pushes actually succeeded, we don't need to push anything. Right. I kind of like that about Amplify, that it will tell you. It's frustrating, but it will tell you before you actually update the backend whether or not your update is going to work. So I won't break things for everybody else. It just gives me the error. All right. So we're not going to be able to put in the nice, pretty looking name like I wanted to. But we could do something else that might help with that. If I could quit scrolling around and find where I'm supposed to be. Here we are. So instead of community name, we'll switch this back to community ID. And we'll save it. Make sure we get this working again before we go back. Now let's refresh. And it's still not working. Errors, validation error, field community name, and type. Community advertisement is undefined. I thought we got rid of that. Yeah, we did. Maybe I just didn't save it. There we are. Yep, I just forgot to save. Okay, so now we're back to our original screen. So what we could do is we could we could do a little bit of string manipulation and say like, okay, we're going to limit this to so many characters, and then just put kind of like a ... next to it. That's a possibility. We could also limit the length, but we're still going to have the problem here. Like, it's not going to know when to break. Like when to break the word. We have really long one like this. For some reason, all these names are very long. All right, let's just go in now. We'll inspect this and see if we make this bigger, how big we'll actually need to make this so that it looks a little bit better. So this div, let me move my screen. Let me make this bigger. And we'll pull this out. And we can go into our dev tools and see how wide that is and where we're getting the width from. So the width is 40 pixels. Maybe that's coming from the grid. Width 0. So it looks like we're inheriting the width from somewhere. Maybe it's a max width. I didn't look for that. See if there's a max width on here. Yep, max width of 25%. So we could get rid of that max width and see how that'll look. So let's try that. Take away the max width. Take away flex basis. If we take out the max width, then we can display everything properly. That would work. Yeah, that would work. We have everything in a grid right now, a mature UI grid. And let's see if we can override the max width. Normally, I wouldn't try to override the default styles, but in this case, that's going to be the simplest way. Max width, Let's go with 50% instead of 25%. Where we at? See if that works. I'm not even sure if that'll work. Hey, let's refresh just to make sure. Okay, that didn't work. It looks like it's being overridden. All right, so since that didn't work, let's look at our documentation for our grid. We're gonna open up in Material UI how the grid works. Fluid grids, grid with breakpoints. I think I want the API. That's what I want. The grid API. I want to see what our options are for grid. Align content component. We could try to maybe apply it to the root. Or we could just get rid of the grid altogether. That's a possibility. Is this? You know what? We're at the wrong grid. That's the problem. We need to go up a level. Because it's not the grid, it's this paper element. Or maybe, oh no, it's for the whole component. So right now we're saying we want this to take up a third. All right, so on extra small screens, it should only take up a fourth of the screen, which is probably where we're getting the 25% from. On larger screens, it's taking up a larger space. So let's verify that. This should be a larger screen. Here's our grid. Is that it? Or we need to go up more? Yeah, here's our grid. Yep, and it's always 25. So let's mess with the grid. Let's see. What if we take up a third here? And what if we say we want it to take up at least half? I think that's how it works. Let's see what it's done. Oh, that actually made it smaller. We need to go the other way. That's interesting. I thought the way it worked was, I guess it's out of 12. All right, it's out of 12. So 4 would be 25%. So we want this to be, let's try 6. Let's try 6 here and 6 here. So it could take up to half the screen, which is what we were going to do with that 50%. So let's see if that accomplishes what we want. Hey, that works. Cool. So obviously when we make the screen really small, it's still going to look weird. But if somebody's on a decent sized screen, then it'll look a lot better. Okay, that solves problem number 1. Let's check out, now we want to make this button appear over here. And we also want it to be look more like a delete button. So maybe we'll make the button color be a different color, maybe like a reddish color, and then also put the icon in there. So first step, let's get it to appear on this side. Then we'll worry about the rest. So now we can go down to where we have our div here, which contains our typography, right? Our text, and then here's our button. Now we have set flex direction row. Let's see. Let's see where we want to do this. Whoops, flex direction row. Justify content. Let's say space between. See if this gives us a little bit better spacing here. No, not yet. I would think at the very least this one, since it's not it's not that long. Well, let's inspect it and see. Okay, these are taking up all of the width of the container. So our typography is taking up the full width. I think that's the problem. You know, if we were to give our typography a width, let's say a max width of, I don't know, 50. We'll do something really small. Maybe that would work. See the flex. Maybe the flex stuff isn't working. Because we never set display flex. That's possible. All right, if we set display flex, then maybe that'll work. So let's do that. I'm so used to working with React Native where flex is the default, so you don't have to set display flex. I think that's the problem, is that I just had never set display flex. So in a previous stream when we tried to get this working, it could have worked. There we are. Now we have our buttons displaying, and we don't even need to mess with the max width because, you know, we're going to get, like I said, on small screens, it's going to look weird no matter what. But right now, if we're on a decent width screen, we have our buttons next to here. Cool. All right, so let's look at Material UI, which is our UI framework that we're using, comes with these button components, and it has a color prop, and we can set the color prop to secondary, and that should give us our reddish color. Now, depending on your theme, whoa, let's give the let's see what we call it. Is it variant? Yeah, variant. And let's make the variant outline. Let's see what outline it gives us and how that looks. I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that look. So this is contained, I think, was the other one we could do. There we are. So contained gives us this reddish color. It's not like we're gonna have to add some space in between here because it looks terrible when it's all together. But we'll add some space and we'll change the icon to a little trash can. So let's look at button. So contain button. Let's see a button with an icon. There we are. Buttons with icons. So this is just an icon button. Let's use that. Yeah, let's use icon button, and then we'll put an icon, this delete icon in here. Let's see how we get that. Icon button and delete icon. Hey, Michael's here. How's it going? And Eric asks, how did you learn React? Through a lot of free resources. So for a while, I learned with free resources. At some point, I did the Udacity React Nano degree. So I did pay for that, and I was in the first cohort of the Udacity React Nano degree. I learned a lot from that. I learned about React and React Native. But other than that one course, everything else was just free resources online. So the React documentation, a lot of YouTube videos. There was a guy that used to do a lot of YouTube videos. I don't think he's been producing videos lately though, but it was Learn Code Academy was the YouTube channel, and that was really big in helping me get introduced to React. Let's go up to the top and import these. And we'll come down here and change this to icon button. And we'll change that to delete icon. Let's see if it works. I'm assuming icon button takes the same props, but it's possible it doesn't. We should give it this ARIA label. So let's do that. Yeah, I guess we can do colors. We'll give it an ARIA label. I don't know if we can put the variant. Yeah, it looks like you can't do the variant. What's this? Yeah, there we are. All right, cool. Now we have these little delete buttons. And because of the way the buttons look, we don't necessarily have to put in any spacing. Now, yeah, this is pretty clear as to what we're looking at. It looks a lot better. I'm not super happy with it. I'm not 100% happy with the way this looks, but it looks a heck of a lot better than it did before. Let's verify that it still works. Yep, it still works. Okay. I might want to maybe make these line up a little bit. It looks like the text is too far above where the button is. So we can, here on our container div, say align items. And we can say center. Since we're using Flexbox, that should align everything into the center. There we are. So now we see the text lines up in the middle of our button. Not bad. A little bit cleaner. All right, cool. Another question here. Eric said, would you say the React Nano degree was worthwhile? Yeah, for me, the React Nano degree was worthwhile. I did a video on it. So if you go back and look through my previous videos, I did one on the React Nano degree, like a full review of it. That's probably better. If you're interested in that nano degree, I would recommend watching the video because I did that video right after I completed the nano degree. So it's still fresh in my mind. That was a couple of years ago for me. So probably whatever I say in this video is not going to be as good of advice as I had back then when it was still fresh. But it did help me. At that point in my career, I learned a lot from that about like the right way to do things. So I think it was definitely it was a good investment for me and a good investment of time and money. The best thing about it was the feedback that I got. When you learn on your own, you don't get a lot of feedback because it's just you critiquing yourself. With this nano degree, I would turn in my project and then I would get feedback and have to fix my project based on the feedback. And there could be multiple rounds. You know, that might happen 3 or 4 times before I got it right. That pushed me to make my projects even better than I would have on my own. So that that push was good for me. It forced me to work through problems and learn a lot than I would have just on my own. All right, so this is not bad. Uh, I still want these to look a little bit nicer, but we'll need some help on the back end for that. And I definitely want to let my back end engineer know that this connection that we should have, like I should be able to access all the data through our connection, but I can't. So a little, I'm not really sure why that's not working, but it should work. All right, the other thing we wanted to do was test to make sure we've deleted some of these. Now I want to try to add them back in. What was this? Washington. I think it was 15301. So if I go in here and I add back in a bunch of these parishes, I should be able to add them. Before, remember at the beginning I said there was a bug I found? Before, I wouldn't be able to add in parishes back in that I had already deleted. But let's see if I could do it now. All right, so that says successful. In order to see them successfully display here, though, I'll have to refresh the app. That's the real test now. Hey, and they pop up. Awesome. So, good job, Bruno. Bruno fixed the bug. So now that works. What was happening on the back end is when you delete something, and I can show you here in the code what we're doing. When I delete something, all I'm doing is setting, I could find the delete function. It's setting the underscore delete value to true when you delete something. So what would happen before is when you go to create it, it would look and say, hey, this is already created. And then it wouldn't do anything. Now what it's doing, this Lambda function in the back end, we send it an array of IDs, these IDs that you see here, and now it checks to see, is this already created? If it's already created, let's take that delete flag or deleted underscore deleted key and let's set it to false. All right, so now it works properly. All right, awesome. And this is a little bit more readable, right? It could be better. It could be better. Abraham says you could use the list component. We could do the list component. Why don't we check that out? Yeah, I got some time before my next meeting. Let's check out the list component and see if it would make it a little bit nicer. To see what they look like. I'd like a list that maybe has... yeah, maybe something like this. I don't need an avatar with text and icon. Yeah, maybe the dense, maybe a dense list with the icon at the end. To be honest, we actually kind of created our own list. The only thing that I would like it to do maybe is have every other one maybe with shading behind it. So maybe like the selected list item. Yeah, I don't know. I think if I would have used the list to begin with, then that would have been better. But for now, um, we basically achieved the same thing. So I don't think I'm going to go with the list right now. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go with it right now. If anybody has any other ideas for how to improve how this look, let me know. I know we can definitely make this input a little bit bigger. Right now it's too narrow. So let's make this input able to take up the full width so we could actually see the names that are in here. And I know this seems redundant now to display them twice. Yeah, for now, I don't see a way around this just for now because, like, when you go into select more, you want to see the ones you've selected before you save. So this is important to have right now. But I could see maybe in the future thinking up a different way to handle this. But for now, I'd say we accomplished what we wanted, with the exception of the name thing. We accomplished what we wanted to accomplish right now. All right, let's do a commit. I'm still working on the main branch, which, if you're working with a bunch of people on a project, is generally not a good idea to work on the main branch. But right now, I'm the only engineer working on this, and the project is not live. So that's why I'm committing directly to the main branch. Otherwise, everything would be its own branch with a pull request that could be reviewed. So we're going to do get status, see what we've changed. The schema has changed, but I think the only thing that changed on the schema was just the formatting. When I hit save, the auto formatter did a little bit of work. Um, but we actually reverted all our changes manually. And then the other component we worked on was this behavior form. We did do some changes in our edit ad set component, but then we reverted those changes. So this looks accurate. You know, git commit with the AM flag. It's going to be I guess improve UI for listing and deleting communities. That looks good. And we'll push that up to GitHub. Now the code's on GitHub, so if my computer just completely exploded right now, we still have our code saved. Now let's do. So I had said that I wanted to hide this by default because right now these basically don't do anything. They link to some places, but it's not really like it still says tab 1. I think this just takes you back to the main screen. I mean, I guess we could change the name of this to like home. This is create new business profile. So we could change the name. Tab 3 does nothing. So maybe let's do that. Let's change these names so that they make more sense. And then we'll get rid of tab 3. And we'll also make this close by default to give the user more space to work. So the first thing is to find where we have this. So I'm just going to search for tab 1. And that's in this drawer component. And we can see where they're going now. This is taking us, this history.push changes the URL in the browser. This goes to the home. This goes to create business profile. And this goes to welcome, which I guess is a screen that we're not even using. So let's get rid of this. And instead of the contact support icon, maybe we could give it a better icon. So maybe a plus icon for creation. This primary, I guess, is the primary text. So create new profile, create new business profile. And this is going to be home. I thought that was going to happen. It's too long. Let's get rid of the icons. Of course, then when we close it, we won't be able to see the icons here. Variant for the drawer permanent. Let's take it, do a different variant here. So let's see, permanent, persistent. Let's see what temporary does. Oh, okay, so that just pops out like that. Interesting. That's not bad. Then we don't have to worry about icons. Yeah, let's do that. We can get rid of these icons. I have nothing against icons, but it'll slow us down because then we'll have to think of what we want each icon to be. This way, as we add things, I don't have to worry about what the icon's going to be. All right, so now that provides us with some quick links. We don't really have any other pages that would make sense to use here yet. So right now, the dashboard home screen just shows you business profiles. You can create a new profile from here. And if we go to view details, we see our ad sets. Good. We can delete an ad set or edit the ad set. We can create a new ad set. Let's see if the ad set creation screen. Good. So nothing that we did on the other screen is let's see. I want to make sure I didn't break this screen by our edits to the other component, because the same behavior component, it's the same component here. So let's go with the famous zip code. Yay, and there we are. We did mess it up. So let's fix it. So this set communities list state. We messed it up. So in our behavior form, right now, we're looking for communities. Even though it's optional, we're still looking for it. And we're trying to map over these communities. So what we need to say is, if there are communities, then map over them. That's what this little question mark is. It means it's conditional. Oh, what is it called? The name of this just slipped my mind. But I know what it does, but I can't remember what it's called. But this is some newer syntax, newer JavaScript syntax. And when you do this, it's basically checking to say, before we try to map over this, let's check and see if this even exists. If it doesn't exist, we're not even going to try to map over it. Optional chaining, that's what it's called. You know what? And this is opening automatically. We're going to have to fix that so it doesn't open automatically. All right, cool. So that works now. It doesn't break. I think in general, it's good to just use optional chaining automatically, like by default. It especially when you're doing things like this, where you're mapping over items. Uh, if you don't do it when you're testing and you have data, everything could work fine. But there may be some edge cases, some situations where you don't have the data that you think you're going to have, and then it'll crash your app. But just this one little question mark could cause your app to keep running and not crash. So I'm definitely a big fan of the optional chaining syntax. If you can't use optional chaining for some reason, like you could always do this. If you did that, you would achieve the same thing. Okay, but it's a little bit redundant since you're checking for communities, and then if communities exist, then you're checking for communities again, and then you're mapping over communities. So this syntax is just more concise. All right, we saved that, so we fixed that error, but we still have the issue of this opening up automatically, which I believe is doing that because we have it set to is visible by default. So let's find out where we're pulling in this drawer component and what we're passing in, because I expect we're probably passing in true or something like that for is visible. So we're going to search for drawer component. Yep. And it says is visible open. And let's find open up here, which is state. And our default state is true. We're going to set that to false as the default. Save that. Now when we refresh, it should be closed by default. Yep. But we can still open it and close it. Awesome. All right, cool. So now this is looking a little bit better, a little bit, got more space here. Once we start getting more data in here, it's going to look nicer because we'll be able to display some analytics, things like that. There's a lot more details that could be displayed here that we aren't currently displaying. But not bad for now, not bad. All right. I think I'll probably start to wrap the stream up soon. So I got a meeting in about 20 minutes. So we can do maybe a little bit more. I could answer some questions if y'all have questions. Should at least save this. Happened to my terminal. Whoa, my terminal is looking very odd right now. There we are. Get status. I'm just gonna add everything and do a git commit and say fix app drawer and behavior form communities error. Okay. I tend to like to commit things, very small changes. I don't like to wait too long between commits. It just makes it easier if something's wrong to go back and figure out what went wrong. If you have to search through a commit that has a ton of information, it's very hard to revert that without accidentally reverting things that you don't want to get rid of. So committing things often is a good way to work. Even if it's just you working on it, it's still a good way to work. And if you have a team, it's respectful to your team. Right. I guess. Oh, there we go. Got some more questions here. Do you ever use HTML templating engines like Pug or EJS? All right, so I used Pug back when it used to be called Jade, and at some point, some other company had the name Jade, and so they had to change it from Jade to Pug. But I really did like Jade a lot. Uh, for if you're just using HTML, I haven't made a site in just plain HTML with or without a templating engine for a long time, like years and years. Once I started working in React and getting paid to work in React, that's basically what I've been working with. So I've been working with React or React Native for the last at least 4 years. Um, my computer froze for a second. Can everybody still hear me? Everything good? Glad the mic stayed connected. Last time that happened, my mic disconnected, and I had 8 minutes of live stream with no sound, and I didn't realize it. But all right, great. If anybody has any more questions, let me know. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna wrap the stream up because we've pretty much accomplished everything that I wanted to during this stream. Um, I'll probably have a lot more to do on the next stream as we get some feedback for this and iterate on it. But for now, at least, uh, we've we have the features that are necessary to start using this. I have some other engineers working on actually displaying the data that we put into our admin panel that we've been working on. They're going to display that data inside an app, so an Android and iOS app. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. Maybe I'll show that on the stream as well, kind of the other side of things, the user side, what they'll actually see. But yeah, until then, thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend. I hope to see you again at some point next week.